The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Tony Robie and staff. Now, let's join your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer and broadcaster, Jason Bryant.
And welcome back, Hokie Nation. Another episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Jason Bryant here with you, joined today by the head wrestling coach of your Virginia Tech Hokies, Tony Robie, as he is headed east to Virginia Beach to do a little recruiting at the NHSCA Nationals. And Coach Robie, before we talk about Cleveland and 2018, this is always a busy weekend for coaches around the country. Most of the seniors are already locked up. Coaches flock to Virginia Beach mainly to check out that junior tournament and the sophomore tournament. And, with it being about a 4.5-hour drive, depending on traffic and people going through Charlottesville and Afton Mountain and whatnot, what's this weekend mean for Hokie wrestling and the future of Hokie wrestling?
Well, I think it's just an opportunity for us to hopefully, identify some new prospects and an opportunity for us to evaluate some kids that we're already recruiting. There are a few seniors that are still available that we're looking at as well. So, but yeah, the majority of the kids that we've got highlighted to take a look at are juniors, and then of course some sophomores. But yeah, most of the folks will be on the class of 2019 right now to try to firm that up. And hopefully we've got 2 commitments in that class as of now, and we can probably get 2 or 3 more this spring, and we'd feel really good about the class of 2019. But there's definitely kids from all over the country, especially the East Coast, that come to Virginia Beach this weekend. Thousands of kids. It's a huge event. They have a middle school event as well. So excited to get there and to try to watch some wrestling. It's not always the easiest thing to watch. I don't know what the number of mats is, but it's quite a few, and it's, you've got to be on the ball and you've got to know what's going on. So just excited for another opportunity to hopefully identify some future Hokies.
Yeah, you know how many mats there are? There's 206 for those of you that want the Sports Center throwback there. One thing that's also interesting about this tournament is it's morphed over the years. It used to be this is where you become a national champion. Now it's become this is where you come to kind of get discovered. If it's not Fargo, it's here because monster tournaments like the Super 32, for example, or what NHSCA Senior Nationals used to be, you could find those diamonds in the rough in that blood round, that round of 12. But now a lot of those kids are, with the internet the way it is, have already been scooped up or they're already on the radar. And, when you come to this tournament, I mean, how hard is it for a wrestler to surprise a Division I college coach these days with all the technology that's out there?
It's definitely different than it used to be. There's no question about that. It's hard. Very few kids slip under the radar, so to speak, like they used to. But, I do think for us, there are some kids that maybe are late bloomers, kids that, maybe started taking wrestling serious a little bit later than a lot of kids do, and are just now starting to get their feet underneath them and starting to make improvements. And one of the things that I think is important when you're recruiting and you're identifying kids is that they're on the right trajectory and they're just continuing to get better and better, and they haven't peaked yet. So I think that's a good way to evaluate kids, and I think there's a lot of kids that will, if you see improvement throughout the course of their career, they're headed in the right direction. They still love the sport of wrestling, and they're willing to come in and make the commitment and do the work necessary to accomplish their goals. So it's like I said, as much as anything, it's just another opportunity to evaluate kids and get Virginia Tech out there and have them see us and, develop that relationship.
When we look back to when you came on board at Virginia Tech, over a decade ago, and the type of recruit that's reaching out, I mean, now with the profile of the program, winning a trophy, multiple top 10 finishes, the level of kid that's inquiring, what's the difference in that?
I just think it's a little bit easier to get your foot in the door. When we go after the elite level kids, we're still recruiting at Penn State, Ohio State, and schools like that, and that presents some challenges. But it's a heck of a lot easier for us to get our foot in the door with some of the top level recruits in the country. We certainly have kids that have. We don't have to work quite as hard to get them interested in Virginia Tech. They're familiar with the program. They're familiar with the success of the program. I think with, what we've done here recently and with the additions of our coaching staff, it's a pretty easy sell for us, or it's certainly gotten easier, let's say that. And then I think once we get kids on campus, that's when I feel like we can really elevate our status with recruits, getting them to Virginia Tech, let them see the campus, see the surrounding area, spend some time in Blacksburg, see the facilities. And a lot of kids, once they get there and they get that feel, we go way up their list typically.
Now we center back to the 2018 championship season for these teams that are coming in and out of Cleveland. Of course, everybody should be out by now because I don't know. I spent 2 weeks in Cleveland, and there's a joke in there somewhere, but I spent 2 weeks in Cleveland. The Hokies spent a week in Cleveland, finishing in 8th place. This is your first full season running this one start to finish. What was it like actually, navigating the ship the entire season, from the first whistle of preseason practice to now, like, all right, tournament's over, we've got a top 10 finish?
Yeah, well, today's actually day 366 as the head coach for me. So they say the first 100 days are the most important 100 days within your career. So I think we did a pretty good job, and I tried to work incredibly hard on the front end of this to set ourselves up for success. And the first step to do that was to secure a great coaching staff, and then I think just maintain the momentum that we had created the last several years with our fan base, with our donor base, and I feel really good about what we've been able to accomplish in those areas and what we've been able to accomplish in recruiting and just stabilizing things. I think was the first thing that we had to do, and I think that happened pretty quickly. And then getting the guys to buy in to new coaches and new philosophies and a different way of doing things. And overall, I think when we step back and we look at the big picture overall this year, we've got to feel pretty good about what we accomplished. There's a lot of uncertainty coming into this season, losing as many guys that we did, being as young as we were, and for us to win an ACC championship, put 3 guys in the semifinals of the NCAA tournament, and Jared Hod advanced to the finals of the NCAA tournament, another top 10 finish for us. It's pretty good. I think anytime, you're competing at this high of a level, especially at the NCAA tournament, so you always feel like you could have done a little better. You left a little bit on the table, and we certainly feel that way too. And it serves as motivation for me personally, to go out and continue to get this thing moving in the right direction and improve on our finishes and produce NCAA champions and, multiple All-Americans and, compete for team trophies. That's really what the goal of this program is. And that's what my goal is.
Was there any difference? I mean, when you look at, okay, last year you're the interim coach, there's the coaching change at the end of the season, and this year you being the boss. I mean, was there any difference feeling, that twisting and turning you get in your stomach when, you're the boss? You're not just there kind of taking over and then I'm probably going to be the boss. You're the guy. I mean, was there any different emotions this year compared to last year?
I don't really think so in terms of the emotions that I felt. I do think once you're the head coach, you have a greater appreciation for all that goes into making every decision and being the guy that has the final say in making every decision. And that's something as an assistant coach that you're typically just giving input on. So, you put a lot more thought to a lot of the decisions that you make, and you understand that there's ramifications, there's consequences, and that these things can play a huge role in the success of your program. So I take that very seriously for sure. And at the end of the day, it all falls on you, whether it's good or whether it's bad. So it's definitely a different role, and there are different pressures associated with it. But overall, like I said in the past, I felt like I was ready for this for a long time. Really probably was beyond, just in terms of age and growing a little bit beyond the assistant coach's role, and was ready to be a head coach and was excited about the opportunity to be a head coach. And, I learned a lot in my 12 years at Virginia Tech, helping Coach Dresser build the program to where it was when he left. But, I think that at the end of the day, you're in this for the kids, and that's what it's about. You want to help these guys accomplish their goals, and you want them to feel good about their careers when it's over. When a guy like Dennis Gustafson is done wrestling, whether he accomplished all of his goals or not, you want to feel good about the opportunities that you provided him and that you put him in a position to do what he could, do and reach his goals and reach his potential more than anything.
Let's just start with Jared Haught finishing as an NCAA finalist, the second finalist in school history, the other being Devin Carter, and just be the fourth three-time All-American in school history. And you look at the number of multiple-time All-Americans, they've come in the last several years, and you've really seen the program go from, okay, we got a multiple-time All-American. Now we've got, guys, three-time All-Americans. The first time I remember watching Jared Haught in college, he was wrestling Kyle Snyder, and there were two takedowns in the match, and people were like, wow, this Haught kid, ranked coming out of high school, but not like a nationally known name for a lot of people outside of maybe the Middle Atlantic states. And just talk about his development over the years. And the first time you got your hands on him, did you think this guy had the potential to be an NCAA finalist?
I think looking back on it, the one thing that was easy to identify with Jared early on when he got to Blacksburg just was his toughness and his work ethic and his ability to push himself mentally and physically. I can't sit here and say that I thought he'd be a three-time All-American and NCAA finalist. That's really a credit to him and how he approached his wrestling and how he approaches his life, really, and tries to improve on everything he does on a daily basis. But I can remember early on, the first Jared was in, it may have even been, for camp, or he was taking classes for his freshman year. And I remember drilling with him and then putting him through just a very short Aerodyne workout. If you've ever done an Aerodyne workout, you know how difficult those things are. But Jared, he drilled and he was getting really, really tired. And then he did a couple Aerodyne sprints, and he had to get his inhaler out. We cut the workout off because he was getting so tired and such shortness of breath that he had to get his inhaler. And I just remember, thinking this guy's got a long ways to go, but there's not a lot of guys that can push themselves as hard as Jared was going to push himself physically on a daily basis. And I think that's a big contributor to the success that he's had, is his ability to do that on a daily basis. And when you do that and you push that wall back just a little bit every single day, and you come in and you work like he has, as committed as he has over the course of 5 years, this is ultimately what can happen for you. So it's truly a credit to him and his parents and his character and his commitment to everything that he does.
There's some pretty rough and tumble kids that come out of West Virginia, and even though Sammy Hansen's up there in Morgantown, do you think Jared Haught's success at Virginia Tech is going to be opening more doors for those Hammer type of kids that say, you know what, I think I want to cross that border. I want to go to Blacksburg?
For sure. I think just the kind of person he is, not only with West Virginia, but I think in a lot of other places, it's an easy sell for us to go into somebody's home and say, look, listen to, or look at what this guy has done throughout his career, where he started and where he finished at. And, if you've got that kind of commitment and you come into a program that has the kind of culture that we have, you can have the same kind of success and more. So, I think it's anytime you have a guy like Jared, that's the kind of student he is, the kind of person he is, and then has the kind of success wrestling that he's had, it's an easy sell.
What was the first thing he said to you when he came off the mat after losing in the finals?
He apologized, which to me, I told him that, that he doesn't need to apologize to us. I mean, we're thankful for everything that guy has done for us. And, it was tough to watch just because, he was in position to win the match. Obviously, he beat that guy twice. Both of those matches were barn burners for sure. And we knew it was going to be a tight match, but, Jared was devastated. I think this is something that he believed was going to happen for himself. And when you put that kind of work into it and you lose in the fashion they did in the closing seconds of a match, it's really, really tough. So it was hard just to see how emotional Jared got. And I think as a coach, it makes you very emotional. And it was, I really felt for him and, was not disappointed in him by any stretch of the imagination, but disappointed for him because, he fell short and it was tough on him. There's no question. So it's probably going to sting for a while, but, I told Jared that the one thing that he can do, and I lost in the finals as well, and when you look back at your career someday, you want to feel good about what you put into it. And you want to know that you gave everything that you possibly could. You didn't cut any corners. You didn't take any shortcuts. And, the chips sometimes fall where they do. And I think Jared can look back at his wrestling career and feel really, really good about what he invested into his success, regardless of whether he achieved his ultimate goal or not. I mean, they say it's about the journey, and that guy's journey was about as good as it can get. It's certainly going to set him up for success for the rest of his life.
Also, the second three-time All-American ever from the state of West Virginia, the first finalist ever from the state of West Virginia. So he's got that going for him. Now, I got to know what your opinion was of his song selection coming out to Dueling Banjos for the NCAA finals. I mean, being from Pocosin, Virginia, that one kind of is like, whoa, you're hitting close to the vest there, buddy. But what was your reaction when you heard the banjos?
I actually think it was his second choice. He wanted to come out to some horse sound. So
I heard he did that at the ACCs, right? So
he did, and then he requested it at the NCAAs, and they went with his second choice, which was doing banjos. But hey, that's Jared Hott. That's who he is. So I was all for it. It probably wouldn't have been my choice, but we'll embrace it.
I mean, I'm just going to go on a side note here. When I was in college, the University of Tennessee women's basketball team came into Norfolk, and it was the opening year of the Constant Center. So powerhouse program, Tennessee, ODU women's basketball was pretty good at the time. This is the only time I'm ever going to mention ODU women's basketball on this show ever again. But the pregame introductions, when they were introducing Tennessee, they're playing dueling banjos. So, I've never seen it used as a positive before. So, Jared Hott, more power to you. I sometimes stand and salute when I hear it. But, credit there. And I did ask some folks about why he didn't go with, Country Roads, but I realized that's a West Virginia University kind of thing, and you don't really want to do that in Blacksburg. So I got some education there about, the West Virginia song choices when you're from that state.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice for sure. But hey,
I was wondering where you're going to go with that.
Who might have second guessed it?
All right, turning things around, we'll talk about the other All-Americans. Zach Zavatsky finally gets the monkey off his back. Been a high seed the last 2 years. Comes through, breaks through, makes the semis, takes the triple dip, ultimately finishing in sixth. But, was it a measure of relief for Zach, or was it, once he got beat in the semis, he just ran into some better wrestlers? It certainly was a big monkey off his back, a big relief for Zach to get over that hump. And I felt like his freshman year, especially, that he was wrestling at a very high level, and I don't feel like he really wrestled poorly at the NCAA tournament his freshman year. He lost to two really good guys in two really close matches. So, that happens. It was the weight class was incredibly deep the last 2 years. Last year, he just wasn't himself at the NCAA tournament. Didn't wrestle well. He knows that. So it definitely, for him to break through, just be able to say that he's an All-American is a big deal, and I think it'll help him moving forward. That being said, I think I talked to Zach yesterday. He came in my office and we spoke for a while, and I don't think he feels great about the way he finished the tournament. Lost, two good guys, and he's lost to Abinator. I think he's 0-4 against Abinator in his career. He was up 5th and 6th, but I think that he could have competed better. I think he knows that, and the good thing is you have a whole year to try to improve on that. Hopefully that he'll use that as motivation to get better. But I know he's excited about the off season this year and improving in the sport of wrestling. And he did an internship last summer, which kind of kept him away from the team, at least in terms of our common time workouts and stuff. And he's excited to be in there with the coaches more and be in there with the athletes more and be a bigger part of the program in terms of the summertime and just take on a leadership role. So I feel good about him moving into his senior year, and we've all seen Zach when he's at his best, and he's hard to contend with when he's wrestling at a high level. So, that being said, there's some really good guys back at that weight class, so we're going to need to continue to work hard, continue to improve, and he can put himself in a position to win an NCAA title next year. Was Zach coming off those two disappointing performances the previous 2 seasons, and you mentioned the internship, do you think that time away might have helped him kind of refocus and kind of clear his head a little bit? Or, we look at these things in hindsight, but how much do you think that internship may have helped him last offseason?
Yeah, it may have. I don't think it hurt him. I do think he needed a little bit of a break from the sport of wrestling a year ago. I feel like he's in a better place right now. That it's not going to be as important for him this year to take a break. I think he needs a little more urgency. But yeah, I think his overall just his view of wrestling, and I think Zach's a guy that you have to make wrestling fun for him, and you have to keep it light. And I think we did a pretty good job of that, and Zach did a pretty good job of that this year. And I think it contributed to his success. And he took a couple losses early in the season. He didn't wrestle his best in Las Vegas, and maybe that helped alleviate some of the pressure that he had felt the previous years. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm just glad that he was able to punch through.
David McFadden, coming off the red shirt, comes in undefeated, falls to Vincenzo Joseph of Penn State, the eventual national champion in the semifinals, then loses to Chance Marsteller of Lockhaven in the contest semis, ultimately pins Alex Barinelli. And what people thought was a pretty fast fall, I went back and looked at the replay. When he came over on it, he was landing, and when he rolled it through, Barinelli was still flat. I mean, it might have been slightly quick, but I definitely don't think it was a touch fall by any means. So McFadden finishing fifth place, and going in undefeated, that's it's a lot of pressure. I mean, how were you satisfied with David's performance, even though he was a 2 seed and a fifth place finish?
Well, I don't think pressure affects David. He competed at a high level his entire life, and won at a high level his entire life, national tournaments. And, if you ever win the New Jersey State Championship, there's a lot of pressure at that event, just the way it's structured. So, I thought David went in and he wrestled loose, and he wrestled pretty good. I thought his quarterfinals match was really good against Evan Witt, who ended up third. That's the way that tournament goes. I mean, he lost a tough match in the semifinals to Joseph, and probably gave Joseph, maybe not his best match of the tournament. I stay away from Nebraska, and Joseph had a really good match in the quarterfinals. But, I think that he wrestled pretty good. Could it have been better? Yeah, I think, that's one of those situations where you always feel like, maybe he was not up to his speed. But at the end of the day, that was the best weight class in the tournament. I don't think anybody questions that. So I think for Dave, it's, he's going to have the same guys to contend with next year. So we will take a little bit of time off and we'll enjoy it, but we need to continue to improve and get better and have some urgency and understand what it's going to take to improve our finishes each year and also get on top of the stands at the NCAAs. But I know Dave's a student of sport of wrestling. He's constantly trying to improve and develop new techniques and get better. And I think he definitely got a lot better this year. I mean, last year he redshirted. I mean, he took some losses at the Edinburgh Open and the App State Open, and he didn't have a great redshirt year for a guy that was an All-American the previous year. So I definitely think there was big improvement, and that's ultimately what we're looking for.
You got 7 returning qualifiers. You lose Dennis Gustafson, you lose Jared Haught. You've also got options at 57 with guys that have, like Solomon Shishko, who's been to the show before. So 8 guys that are going to have experience, at least contending for spots next year in the lineup. And let's just talk about who's coming back. Andrew Dunn did get a medical forfeit, and Hunter Bolin as a true freshman went 0-2. But everybody else won matches. You'd probably like to see Dennis Gustafson end his career with better than a 1-2 finish. But overall, what were your general impressions of the guys who went out there, at least coming back from the show with a win under their belt?
I think that we definitely have some work to do in some of those areas. 125 had scored a half point between the ACCs and the NCAA tournament. Had one win on the backside of the NCAAs, and I know Kyle's a freshman this year, but we've got a lot of work to do there. There's a lot of room for improvement. 33, we'll have a young guy in there next year. We'll have potentially a redshirt sophomore, or we could have a true freshman. I don't know. We still have some stuff to figure out in terms of what our lineup is going to look like next year. Brent Moore had definitely good moments throughout the course of the season. But I think he was capable of doing a little bit more at the NCAAs for sure. He's, I think, somebody who has got to have his sights set on being a high All-American next year. I think he's motivated to do that, but Brent's got to start to understand the discipline that's required to consistently do well in college wrestling, and making sure his weight's under control. And that his diet is what it needs to be to really achieve a lot of success. So, as far as our young guys are concerned, Andrew Dunn, I think can improve a lot. But we definitely looking forward. I think we've got some stuff to figure out. I feel good about some guys that are coming off like short seasons. Makai Lewis is going to be a handful. Not exactly sure what weight he's going to be at. We have to figure that out with him and David and Hunter Bolin, and we've got a little bit of a log jam in there. So I think from an individual standpoint, we've got some guys that can go deep in the NCAA tournament, but the guys that didn't get done what they wanted to get done and didn't score the kind of points that they were capable of, they need to have some urgency, and they need to improve dramatically in the next 365 days or whatever it is until next year's NCAA tournament.
Have you given any thought to how you might structure the season next year? Because we're already in the end of the season. We're into the off season, but there's also scheduling that happens. Teams are already jockeying to fill their dual meet dates and things like that. Anything that has jumped out to you says, you know what, this might work for us next year?
Yeah, I actually like the way we had our schedule set up. We kind of took a break a little bit later than a lot of teams do. We wrestled West Virginia in, I think, December 23rd it was, or December 22nd past year. We're going to do the same thing next year, except it'll be in Morgantown. And then we'll probably take a little bit more of a break there between Christmas and New Year's, and then come back in the second half of the season and finish things up with most likely the Virginia duels. And would like to get one more, I guess, high profile or top tier team on our schedule next year. I'm working hard to do that right now, but we'll go out to Missouri and Russ, Missouri, and Princeton's coming in. I think we have the University of Oklahoma coming in as well. So still putting the pieces of the puzzle together with the schedule, but we'll evaluate that, and I'll sit down with our coaching staff before we put anything in writing completely. We'll have a game plan going into it.
I want to circle back to the championships as I'm looking over the results. Some things that jumped out at me. I was like, wait a minute, we need to talk about this before we close out our NCAA post wrap-up episode here on Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. And that was Jared Haught's semifinal fall over Ben Darmstadt of Cornell. And when you look at the replay, basically, he just threw a grown man to his back with basically an underhook. It was one of the more powerful moves I've seen in recent memory. And it's just one of those things that I'm just going to be like, I was walking around press row. I got up from my perch on the mic, and I'm like, did anybody see that? Oh, my goodness. That was, I mean, has he ever done that to you? And, how do you look at a move like that and be like, that was awesome?
Yeah, he hasn't done that to me just because I don't tangle with Jared Hott. He's too much of a grown man for me. I'm way too old for that. But, yeah, it didn't completely surprise me. I mean, if everybody in our program and anybody who's wrestled Jared knows that his physical strength is just extraordinary. So I think when he went out and he put a lot of pressure on that guy just with his hand fighting and scoring that takedown at the end of the second period there, really put some urgency into Darmstadt. And that's not really his game. Attacking is not his game. So I think when we put him in a position where he had to come after us and he had to attack, it made it pretty easy for Jared. He took a double leg shot with his elbows out. Jared caught him that underhook and just whipped him over. And once he got him on his back, we knew it was over. And bonus points are huge. So that was a big deal for us, getting those 2 extra bonus points. Anytime at the NCAAs you have an opportunity to get bonus points, pins or techs or majors, you've got to take advantage of that. So, it was pretty exciting. It was a good way to go into the finals.
I'm still just going to remember, just because, I mean, he left his feet. I mean, he just like Hulk smash, just basically just threw him. Oh, I mean, I know what that feels like to land. I don't know what it's like to actually do that to somebody. But when we look at the conference as a whole, it was the first ever all ACC final. Of course, Jared was on the losing end of it. But if you can take a step back and what this has meant for the conference as a whole, the whole conference the last 10 years has elevated. We've got our first all ACC final. We got, NC State, which actually has a show on this network. We're not going to give the Wolfpack too much credit on this episode. That's for their show. But they come home with a team trophy, another ACC team that's gotten a team trophy in the last couple of years. And, if you look at it from a conference standpoint, this was a pretty decent season.
I think the ACC, I've been in this conference for the last 12 years, and we've talked about it on the show. how improved the conference is. North Carolina's getting a lot better. Pitt's going to get a lot better with their new coaching staff. So, yeah, I mean, and Glenn Lanham does a fantastic job as well. So, in my opinion, the ACC is the second best conference in the country behind the Big Ten. I think we proved that this year at the NCAA tournament. I think it's just going to continue to get better, too, with the new coaching staff in place at a lot of these places, and the momentum that we have as a conference. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good time to be a part of the ACC conference in sport of wrestling, and I think it's only going to help Virginia Tech wrestling.
All right, any final words as we wrap up the 2018 season? General thoughts about the tournament? I mean, we set an attendance record in Cleveland. We had pretty good viewership on ESPN2 and the various networks. I mean, we had Kyle Cannell and Tariq Wilson, two unseeded guys from Ohio, actually probably cost Ohio State the team championship by knocking off their guns. I mean, from a coach, how much do you actually have to look at and watch the tournament as, kind of like, okay, wow, this team race is close. I mean, what was that like for you? And how much did you have to take in of everything that was going around non-Virginia Tech stuff?
Well, to be honest with you, you really don't get to watch a whole lot of it. If you're watching a lot of it, it's not really a good thing as a coach. So I didn't get caught up very much in many of the matches. I didn't hardly watch any of them. I watched a couple of the finals matches early on, watched a few of the semifinals matches, but it was really just tried to focus on our team and our guys and their opponents and what we had to do to be successful there. But I'll say this much. I think any time the NCAA tournament is in that part of the country on the East Coast, I mean, I grew up about 50 miles from Cleveland, and it's going to be in Pittsburgh next year. I grew up about 90 miles from Pittsburgh. So understand the excitement and just how many people are trying to get there and be a part of it. And the NCAA tournament, if you've never been to that event, you have to get there. There's nothing like it. There's certainly nothing like it in the sport of wrestling. From a fan standpoint, it's as good as it gets. It's just an awesome thing to be a part of. The upsets are unbelievable, and that's what I think makes it so entertaining for our fans. So much fun to watch and be a part of is that you have guys that if you wrestle that tournament again a week later, they might not even place, and sometimes they're in the finals or they're placing in the top three. So that's a pretty cool and unique thing. And I think it's what makes that tournament and the sport of wrestling so special.
Tony Robie, thanks a lot for all the insight this season. We'll be continuing these shows through the off season. A lot of news. We got alumni events. We got various alumni interviews we've got planned and things to keep you abreast of the things happening inside that Hokie wrestling room here on Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. So enjoy Virginia Beach. Have a crab cake at Harpoon Larry's and enjoy the recruiting weekend.
Thanks, Dave. Talk soon.
Hokie fans, listen to Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling anywhere you go by subscribing on Apple Podcasts. Go to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com/iTunes, or you can get the exclusive Android or iOS apps by going to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.